And welcome to this news hour. I'm Daniel Kasahun with the news. The integrated media campaign against Ethiopia is aimed at tarnishing the image of the country and its government. Sympathizers of the TPLF and their loyal media outlets are now using the Nobel Peace Prize Award Prime Minister Abiy won as a pretext to chastise his decision to protect the nation from force. Talking to ETV English, member of the ruling Prosperity Party, Nabiyu Suhul Mikhail said, winning a Nobel Peace Prize does not rule out a leader from protecting his nation. Haptam Ashagri has more.
This is an old armed struggle, but many of the people here that you can see were not born when the Oromo Liberation Army was first formed in the 1970s.
Sympathizers of the TPLF and their loyal media outlets are trying to reproach Abiy Ahmed's decision to lead the war against the TPLF at the front line, seeking his Nobel Peace Prize award. Talking to ETV, a member of a ruling Prosperity Party, Nabiyu Suhul Mikhail said these entities are using the award as a pretext to discourage the efforts of the Prime Minister and cover up the atrocities of the TPLF. Winning a Nobel Peace Prize does not rule out a leader from protecting his country from potential destruction, he remarked.
They are taking the Nobel Prize as a pretext to silence the Prime Minister's efforts and responsibility to defend its nation. But because you are a Peace Nobel Prize winner doesn't mean you wouldn't defend your nation.
The decision of the Premier is rather a courageous move forward to galvanize the public to end the war, Nabiyu said, adding that the world should support his efforts to restore peace and stability in Ethiopia.
The Prime Minister has shown its willingness to create peace in Ethiopia and in the wider Horn. But if an enemy pushes and tries to destabilize your nation, then you have to defend with all the means that you have. So because you are a peace Nobel Prize winner, it doesn't mean you wouldn't defend your nation while there is a clear aggression from a terrorist group. So the Prime Minister has underlined the necessity of peace and the world recognized it. So that is a big claim and a big result.
According to Nabiyu, the audacious decision of the Prime Minister comes from his respect to the general public who are desperate for peace.
The situation is different. We are under attack. The stability, the development of Ethiopia is under attack, and the Prime Minister must act accordingly. So therefore, the Prime Minister is a peace leader, but if there will be an aggression, then he has to defend its nation and the interest of the people as well.
People across the nation are gladly joining the Premier following his call to liberate the country from anti-peace elements who bent on destroying the nation with the help of external forces.
The war.
Now let's come to our trending updates, and which brings you major issues entertained in the past 24 hours in various media outlets. And here with me is our staff reporter, Bina Malamayo. Welcome to
Thank you.
Studio.
Thank you for having me.
First, let's say about the rumors being heard about the Ethiopian president. It's being said that Sahle is not functioning well. And what have you reviewed about it?
Okay, it's an article that was published by the Africa Report, and which dangerously accuses the Prime Minister of not listening any advice from President Sahle, and that the two are not seeing eye to eye with one another over the war in Tigray. The article says that President Sahle is powerless, that the constitution does not give her the power except being ceremonial, and that over the war she wants the two warring parties to come together for a dialogue, but that Abiy Ahmed is not listening to her. Now this has certainly angered the president, that she's replied to it, that this is completely unprofessional, that she has no problem with the prime minister. She's been working with him for all this time, first as a diplomat, she knows him very well, and that he's listening to the advice of everybody in the government, and that this is one way of twisting the war to the Western powers who want to divide the leadership. This is one way of undermining Ethiopia when it says that its head of government wants to go to the front lines to lead the war. But again, they come up with such a story that shocks you, that the president, the head of state, and the head of government are not working together, are not seeing eye to eye with one another over the war in Tigray. So that's what's happening, but she's replied to it that this is a very dangerous but senseless accusation by the Africa Report, and it's shocking that it's the editor-in-chief who wrote this, so it looks like an op-ed or an official position of the magazine.
So the audience or the readers must be cautious enough when taking articles like this.
Oh, sure. These days, many articles are being written, many sensational stories are coming out about Ethiopia, but most do not hold water. This article, for instance, is not based on any reality. He has not interviewed her personally, so he very carefully did not mention the president at all. He didn't say, she told me this and that. It was just an opinion.
Okay, there is also a very top agenda. The Prime Minister of Ethiopia has decided to lead the army from the war front. And what's being entertained or what's being said now from the international media outlets?
Oh, okay. Most of them have entertained this story. First is the BBC Africa, which said that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has opted to go to the battlefield himself and lead the army from there. There's also a story by the Al Jazeera. What differs here is that they've invited KG Tromvo. He's a paid TPLF agent, as we all know. He's a Horn of Africa expert, that sort of thing, but he inclines towards the TPLF. So he was saying that this kind of call to arms by the Prime Minister helps to galvanize the population, and he expects the Ethiopians to come out en masse and help and support or rally behind the Prime Minister. But there are others, you know, the framing is very dangerous. They've framed the story in such a way that his decision to go to the war front is being undermined. They're saying that this is a prime minister who was a Nobel Peace Prize winner, but we find him leading the war. We find him throwing remarks that are very disappointing to this ethnic group or that one. And so these are very controversial personalities. So they can't deny the reality that the head of government is actually going to the front lines, but then they want to twist this in such a way that he's a Nobel Peace Prize winner, but then he's making remarks about this and that. He's leading the war. So how can these two personalities go hand in hand?
He's
so
entitled. He's the commander-in-chief of the Ethiopian Defense Force.
Sure.
So what's wrong with it?
There's actually nothing wrong. He has to defend his country, and that's one of the previous reports were saying this. You know, the newscast, the news report just before you and I started conversation was saying that the Prime Minister can actually make this kind of decision. He should go down in history and be remembered as a hero, because he decided to stay with his army and with his people instead of fleeing like other leaders did.
Okay, let's say the leaders of IZEMA, the executive of the Ethiopian Citizens for Social Justice Party, they have come, they have decided to join the premier or the leadership from the war front. They are going to go.
Oh, yes.
And what have you come up with it?
Okay, the Executive Committee of the Ethiopian Citizens for Social Justice, or IZEMA for short, is one of the main opposition parties in Ethiopia. So they've decided to follow suit following the announcement by the Prime Minister that he'll be leading the nation from the war front. So IZEMA has indicated that this is a very historic call, and that Ethiopia has been suffering a lot by the barrage of insults from the West and the coordinated media attack by the TPLF and its sympathizers, and that this is high time that they actually contributed something significant to the nation, because Ethiopia will come out victorious, but then this is a trying time for Ethiopia, because you can see that when the Prime Minister is away, maybe there's a vacuum here that should be filled by other leaders, but as an opposition party, they've decided to contribute their fair share. So the sympathizers, supporters, executive committee or central committee members of the party will be helping as volunteers in any endeavor that is asked from them, and that they would rally behind Ethiopia and its sons and daughters in these very trying times. So that's a very quite revealing statement from them. And I've also come up with a story lead that says that the Tigray Democratic Party, or TDP, is issuing a statement this morning, and maybe a similar kind of resolution might come out of it. So these are the trending stories that I have for this hour.
Thank you very much, Binyam Alamayo.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
About a little less than 100 years ago, your grandfathers and great-grandfathers were marching as well for the same damn issue. Keep Ethiopia free. 20,000 black Americans marched in Harlem on August 3rd, 1935. If you see the photo, it's just like this, except without the masks. You're doing something that's incredible. I realize you're cold, I realize it's Sunday, but you are now something that is bigger than yourselves. You're making history. Every day for a year I've woken up so damn angry. This is the first morning I wake up and say, yeah, maybe, finally, the tide is turning. They don't know who you are, so you've got to show them. You are lions. Let me hear it. No more. No more. Media lies. No more. No more. No more. U.S. intervention. U.S. intervention. No more UN intervention. No more UN intervention. No more CNN. No more CNN. No more BBC lies. No more BBC lies. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. Hands off Ethiopia. Hands off Ethiopia. Resist. Resist. Endure. Endure. Prevail. Prevail. Let's do it. Thank you.
This is at this news hour. A renowned opposition political party leader Aragawi Berehe appreciates the decision of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to lead his army from the battlefield. He also said that Ethiopians should fight back this terrorist group in unison. Kasamchani reports.
Supports are coming in from different directions following Abiy Ahmed's decision to lead his army at the front line to finish the TPLF off once for all. The Tigray Democratic Party leader Aragawi Berehe commended Abiy's decision, dubbing it timely and crucial.
Thank you. The Prime Minister's decision to join the army in the front and lead the war against the terrorists of TPLF is timely and appropriate. In fact, in my view, it should have been done much more earlier because the TPLF had advanced towards the center without real challenge. So, and subsequently, a lot of destruction has occurred. TPLF had mobilized children as old as 10 and 11 and made them fodder to the war, which is a senseless war, the aim of which is unknown. Basically, they want to dismantle the country.
Aragai underscored the terrorist group, which has been tirelessly working to break the country apart, should be defeated for Ethiopia to have airspace back.
The terrorist group of TPLF are against the history of Ethiopia, against truth, either deliberately or, in most cases, ignorant of how Ethiopia evolved and reached this stage. I think they are ignorant to the evolution of the Ethiopian state. So, because sometimes you see them telling their masters that Tigray was a separate nation from Ethiopia, which is unrealistic. And they wanted to have a separate nation of Tigray, which is a blind calculation, because Tigray has never been a separate nation from Ethiopia.
Aragai noted that Africans should stand by Ethiopia at this critical time, recalling its decisive role and sparkling hope for all black people during the fight for independence.
Yeah, it's true. Ethiopia had been the cradle of unity of Africa. Ethiopians have sacrificed for the cause of Africa, because colonialism was not a blind adventure of the Europeans focused only on Ethiopia. It was focused on the whole of Africa. They have robbed Africa its natural resources, including their human resources. They have enslaved a lot of African brothers and sisters. So Ethiopia had taken the lead to fight this injustice, this inhuman venture of the Europeans, and the Battle of Adwa is a clear example.
He also called upon the people of Ethiopia, particularly the youth, to stand in unison to protect their nation.
Athlete Haile Gebrselassie vows to accept Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's call to march towards ending the war instigated by the TPLF terrorist groups. The renowned athlete indicates that the war in Ethiopia, which is supported by external forces, is a tacit attempt to keep Africa under modern colonization. He said an integrated campaign is launched against Ethiopia to kill the spirit of Africa by crippling the East African nation, which is a beacon of freedom. He dubs Abiy Ahmed's decision as brave and audacious to save the country he is leading. The renowned athlete calls on fellow Africans to stand by Ethiopia. Meanwhile, the renowned Ethiopian long-distance runner Fayisa Lelisa affirmed commitment on Tuesday to join the ongoing survival campaign aimed at defending sovereignty of Ethiopia. The announcement from athlete Fayisa came hours after Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed called on all Ethiopians in particular and the black people at large to firmly stand with the nation. Other prominent individuals are also responding to the Prime Minister's call. Member of the National Museum of Amhara, who is also a member of the Ethiopian Parliament, Christian Tadele, has confirmed that he is in for the battle. The renowned movie producer and director Teodoro Teshome is also among those who accept the call from the Prime Minister. Today's News Hour. A United States-based photojournalist explained the untold plots of United States and the TPLF terrorist group in shaping the media against Ethiopia. He says the United States and Western media are blatantly siding with the TPLF as they warn of aviation security in Ethiopia and echoing the fake narrative of Addis Ababa being encircled by the rebels.
The US has been clearly opposing Ethiopia's fight against the TPLF. Reports indicate that the terrorist group is receiving multiple sort of assistance from such countries and the global media. A US-based photojournalist, Jamal Countess, witnesses his observations on how the US and Western media denied the facts about the conflict. Starting the conflict, the TPLF brutally murdered over 6,000 soldiers of the National Defense Force of Ethiopia in few hours on the night of November 4, 2020. But no Western media and government was interested to talk about this.
But on the night of November 3rd, 2020, TPLF commandos and regular cadres began to attack people that they had served along for a long period of time in their sleep. At night, I do believe I saw reports that the attack began at like 10 o'clock that night on November 3rd and continued for the next 24 hours. During those attacks, they, from what I was told, murdered about 6,000 soldiers. They have committed, within those attacks, they committed atrocities. There are reports and actual survivors, female soldiers who had their breasts cut off. I heard that when they were forced to walk out of Tigray back to Amhara, they were playing games like running them over with tanks and all kinds of things.
All media houses refused to cover balanced stories because they were fixed to go only to Tigray, even before they go to Ethiopia, he said.
In speaking to other journalists, I discovered that people came to Ethiopia with a bias already. And they were making the most amateur of mistakes in terms of this. Nobody came to hear from the Ethiopian government. They went straight to Tigray. They bypassed the Ethiopian government. They refused to do balanced stories. The network of fixers was accessed, I think, before people even got to Ethiopia. So it was like a word of mouth. Hey, use Samson. When you get to Tigray or when you get to Addis, you call Samson. And when you get to Tigray, Samson will pick you up. And Samson is part of a group of fixers who are, more than likely, more or less TPLF intelligentsia.
Using a UN refugee camp in Sudan as a base, the Samri group has been undertaking military operations in Humera and Metakel areas in Ethiopia, Jamal also witnessed.
After the reporting on my cadre, the early local reporting, you see the pictures, if you go back and you see the pictures of the young men holding their plates in front of their faces in the refugee camps in Sudan. And the reports were that there's a large number of young able-bodied men who came into the refugee camps from Ethiopia, who came without families, or they say they were separated from their families. And these were actually the members of the Samri youth group and TPLF cadre who had escaped from the killing in my cadre in Humera and who basically placed themselves in Sudan amongst actual refugees and basically stayed there. I have accounts of people who fled from my cadre after the massacre, who went to Sudan, to the refugee camps, and then were chased out of the refugee camps by the killers, people who had killed their friends and family.
In an attempt to join TPLF's propaganda, the US aviation authorities and media have been giving narratives like the TPLF approaching Addis Ababa while it was over 200 kilometers away from the capital, and the TPLF can exert anti-aircraft attacks on commercial flights.
Addis is not about to fall to the OLF Sheni, which is, I think, what people are trying to really stir up and play off of. And actually, the reports that I'm getting is that the TPLF are being battered in that approach, that I'll call it that kind of northeastern approach to Addis. And I'm just like kind of looking like, okay, well, this is so obviously now like the most ridiculous propaganda. They're repeating TPLF propaganda. The TPLF has a habit of projecting the most ridiculous propaganda, the most sensational propaganda. And then because we've taken this posture with Africa in the West, where we really don't know Africa anymore, if we ever knew it at all, so we're just believing everything the TPLF said.
This whole integrated campaign is aimed at toppling the incumbent.
Prime Minister Abi's decision to lead his army at the actual battlefield is making headlines worldwide. Obviously, some TPLF sympathizers try to relate it with his Nobel Peace Prize, while others stipulated the significance of his decision to mobilize Ethiopians against the terrorist group. Jerusalem Bazaar.
Following Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's announcement to join the army yesterday, various international media outlets are reporting the issue in different ways. Among those medias, BBC Africa came out with a headline: Ethiopia's Prime Minister has said he will go himself to the front line to face rebels. Abiy Ahmed, who won the Nobel Peace Prize back in 2019, implied that Ethiopia's very existence was at stake, says the BBC in its report. Al Jazeera English also reported as Ethiopia's Prime Minister says it's time to lead by personal example, indicating his statement released on social media. This is a time when leading a country with martyrdom is needed. I will go to the front line and lead the military from the ground myself. Those of you Ethiopians who want to be remembered by history for the sake of your country, join me in the fight today, wrote Al Jazeera using Abiy's personal remark. On its report, Al Jazeera invited one of TPLF mouthpiece Jetel Tronvol. Despite his sympathy to the TPLF, Tronvol doesn't deny the fact that Abiy's decision would inspire millions of Ethiopians.
I think it is a sign, a hope for that will also mobilize other Ethiopians to join the military forces and to join the war against the Tigrayan Defense Forces.
The terrorist TPLF group spokesperson Getachew Redda's tweet in response to the Prime Minister is also part of the news. CGTN Africa, on its part, came out with a similar headline saying the Ethiopian Prime Minister decides to head to the war front to lead soldiers battling rebels. CGTN Africa remembered the conflict erupted in November 2019 due to the treasonous attacks on the northern commands of Ethiopian National Defense Force by terrorist TPLF clique. Similarly, Africa News reported the issues with a headline: Ethiopia's Prime Minister has vowed to lead his country's army from the battlefront beginning Tuesday. The 45-year-old Prime Minister had said, "Let's meet at the battlefront," its report reads.
Professor of Political Science at American University and joins me from Washington.
TRT Walid, The Guardian, Bloomberg, The Independent are among those media outlets reported about the Ethiopian Prime Minister's decision to lead the army from the war front.
በአምስተኛው ክፍለ ዘመን ነው እንግዲህ እንደተመሰረተ በሁለት አባቶች አማካኝነት ያው በአምደ ብርሃን እየመራቸው እዚህ ቦታ እዛ ላይ ተራራው ላይ መጥተው አርፈው 7 ቀን እዛ ድንኳን ተክለው በኋላ አካባቢውን እንትን በዚህ በመጠየቅ እዚህ የቤታችን ጽላት ይዘው ያው ገዳሙ በዛን ዘመን እንደተመሰረተ ነው አባቶች አስረዱን።
ሁሉ ነገሩ በቃ ከዚህ ከበሩ ስመጣ ጀምሮ ሁሉ ነገሩ ያስደንቀኛልም ያስፈራኛልም በጣም ታሪካዊ ቦታ ነው በቃ ውስጥህን የሚሰማህ የተለየ ነገር ነው እዚህ ቦታ ላይ መጥተህ ስታየው ሌላ ዓለም ያለህ ነው የሚመስለውና በጣም ይገርማል በጣም ያስደነግጣል አስፈሪም ነው ውስጥህንም ያስደስታል ከመጣህ በኋላ መንፈስህ ልዩ እርካታ ነው የሚያገኘውና ትልቅ ነገር ነው ብዬ ነው የማስበው
The government of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia has welcomed the power-sharing agreement between the civilian and military components of the Sudan. The reinstatement of Abdullah Hamdok as Prime Minister of Sudan and his empowerment to form his cabinet is commendable, the Foreign Affairs Minister of Ethiopia said in a statement. The government of Ethiopia also appreciates the reinstatement of all institutions of a transitional period and the affirmation to make the Constitutional Declaration the legitimate governance document. The government of Ethiopia hopes that the new power-sharing agreement between the President and the Prime Minister will bring peace and stability in the Sudan, in particular, and to our sub-region in general, the statement added. And finally, a reminder of the headlines.